Today, I'm going to show you how I made this leather wrist strap for my camera. Let's get to it. I only used a few materials for this project. Some 1/8" nylon rope or paracord, a small piece of preferably 3.5 ounce leather, and a double spring cord fastener. I'll leave links to everything I used below in the description. For the length of the leather, I found that 7 inches worked best for my wrist, but that can easily be adjusted to fit your wrist size. For the width, we're going to be folding the edges into itself to make channels for the rope, so I found that 2 3/4 inch minimum worked well. Next, I cut a piece of rope long enough to have plenty to work with, and then used a lighter to melt the ends to keep them from fraying. I then threaded each end of the rope through the spring fastener and pulled it all the way to the middle. We will need about 9 inches play of rope before the leather starts, so I measured 9 inches and then added a few macrame knots with another piece of rope to act as a stop. To tie the macrame knot, I took the right string and placed it over the double strings. Then I took the left string, went over the right string, behind the double strings, and then up through the loop formed by the right string. Then I did the same process, only I alternated and started this time with the left string. Once complete, I cut the excess rope and again melted the ends to prevent fraying and to keep the knot from coming apart. As I mentioned earlier, I needed to create channels for the rope to pass through in the leather, and I found that using a bone folder to help crease the bends helped, but this could also be done by hand. To glue the 2 edges of the leather to the middle and to create the channels for the rope, I used Tandy's EcoWeld, which is by far my favorite adhesive for leather. Using a foam brush, I laid a thin line down the middle of the leather and then a thin line down each edge, leaving a strip with no adhesive in between. Next, I laid each strand of rope on the section without adhesive, folded the edges over them, attaching each side to the center strip of adhesive. To hold it in place while the glue dried, I used a few spring clamps. After a couple of minutes, I removed the clamps and moved on to making the stitching lines. To make the stitching lines, I started by measuring a 1/2 inch from each side at both ends and made a mark with my Tandy leather marking pen. Then I used a ruler and the scratch awl to scratch the stitching lines. Next, I used a set of inexpensive leather stitching chisels to punch the stitching holes. To ensure the spacing between the holes stays consistent as I work down the line, I always make sure to place the stitching chisel point furthest to the left in the last hole of the previous set of holes I punched. There are a lot of videos out there on how to stitch to get the best results, and I'll link to one of my favorites above, but what I've found is easiest is to just pick a sequence and stick to that. For example, I always start by using the right needle to stitch from the back and then stitch the left needle from the front into the same hole, but in front and under the right needle's thread. If you continue this sequence, you'll get a very nice looking stitch pattern from my experience. With the stitching done, I moved on to connecting the rope from the top of the strap to the bottom. This is what will allow it to loosen and tighten. Using the free ends of the ropes we made channels for, I used a few more macrame knots around the double string to create a stop at the bottom of the strap, and then cut off the excess rope. And with that, the strap is done. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe and bell button. I also post a lot of behind the scenes and smaller scale projects as Ethan Carter Designs on Instagram, and would love to have you follow me there as well. Also, I've queued up a couple more videos I know you'll enjoy right here. Thanks for watching.